Season 3.
Popcorn rice after discussion.
Want to know some more fun facts?
Isn't it awesome to see some of your favorite content creators and favorite people, honestly, that you follow here on this app, be a part of this amazing community called the Nerd Initiative?
Welcome to Fandoms, a show from every fan's point of view, brought to you by the Nerd Initiative Network. Here's your hosts, Tony and Michael.
All right, Friday, March 3rd. We are episode 13 of Fandoms. Michael, how are you doing?
Good. I feel like 13's not that lucky a number, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's the 13th episode on a Friday, but it's not Friday the 13th, so we're good. But yeah, we're gonna be talking Mandalorian season 3. Don't worry, we're not gonna do that until after we go over some nerd news and do some of our segments. So if you have not seen episode 1 for season 3, what are you doing with your life? Go watch it and then come back and watch this until we give you the spoiler alert, then go watch it and then come back. Yeah, but we've got some nerd news now. Just to let everybody know, we did start a new show, I guess you would say, last week. So on the weeks that we don't have fandoms, we're going to have nerd news. It's not going to be fandom supplemental nerd news, counterpart.
Due to popular demand, basically.
Yeah, not even that. It was more of just trying to make sure that we don't go so over that people just don't want to watch a 3-hour show.
I mean, but I just wanted to stop getting emails from people being like, when are you going to spin off news? When is this going to be its own thing? Like, you guys, like, we need this. It's super important. And I was like, look, if it's like doing a civic duty, like, we should, it's fine. I mean, we'll be martyrs. We'll do it. It's fine.
Yeah. You want to see our faces. We'll
purpose,
oblige.
Basically.
Yeah. Yes. So speaking of that, we're going to get ready to get into nerd news, but I want to go ahead and I feel like Pooja sometimes in her picks get kind of thrown later on after we've talked for 4 hours. So I want to go ahead and give her the first stab at what's going on this week. So Pooja, take it away.
Hello everyone, my name is Pooja and I'm here to bring you the latest in movie news. Let's get into it. Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre is an action comedy starring Jason Statham, Aubrey Plaza, Josh Hartnett, and Hugh Grant. The film follows an elite spy who must track down the sale of new weapons technology and put an end to it. But in the process, he finds he must team up with a Hollywood celebrity in order to save the world. Creed 3 welcomes back Michael B. Jordan as Adonis Creed while also bringing in Jonathan Majors as Damien, an old friend from the past. Adonis may be at the top of his game, but the boxing world is never without its trials and tribulations, and that becomes clear when he must settle things with Damien. The story of Ghostface continues with Scream 6 as we follow 4 survivors of Ghostface antics who leave Woodsboro to start a brand new life in New York City. Let's be honest though, Ghostface is never too far behind when our characters find themselves fighting for their lives against a new killer. Well, that's all we have for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Back to Tony and Michael.
I love the recommendations. I didn't even know about the Jason Statham movie. So
Well, first of all, Scream 6?
And it's in the city this time.
I mean, I'm glad. Look, Hayden Panettiere is getting work again. That's really good to see. I've missed her a lot. Courtney Cox, always a pleasure. Or some of the other faces that we saw in there.
So
I love that. Oh, and then the actress from Wednesday is in there as well. And
Jennifer Ortega.
Yeah,
absolutely. And speaking of movies, since Pooja did a great job on that, if you've been waiting for the best movie of I guess the decade, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is out on Blu-ray and digital.
Nice.
So don't forget to look up that. I've heard good things. I haven't seen it yet. But my kid wants to watch it, so we'll probably
Antonio Banderas is a treasure, clearly, and he's found a nice little secondary career being Puss.
Yeah, and you know that a movie is coming out because they start using the audio on TikTok a whole lot, and there's that "I'm not good at math" thing is all over the place. That, and also, I don't know if you've noticed this or it's just because I'm on the weird side of TikTok. there's a resurgence of celebrities doing home videos reenacting scenes from The Princess Bride.
Really? Like
It's-
As You Wish and
Oh yeah, like Patton Oswalt's involved in it, Jack Black, Seth Rogen's gotten in on one of the scenes. Like there's a number of actors that have just kind of jumped into it, and I'm here for it. It's a lot of fun. Patton Oswalt plays the Sicilian. What was his name? Fezzik, the one who drinks the poison and dies. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched it since the 80s.
oh, stop. Wait, no. Is Fezzik the one Inconceivable?
No, Vizzini. I'm sorry, it was Vizzini. You're right.
Yeah, because I was saying Patton Oswalt would be great as it's Inconceivable guy.
Yeah.
That, and then you have who's Inigo Montoya?
Dude from Rogue One. I forget his name now.
Diego Luna?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
In one of the scenes, he plays Inigo Montoya. And then Jack Black plays Wesley as he's climbing up the rocks. Of course, it's stairs. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I was showing my wife it a lot this evening, just before she was falling asleep. So I don't know how much she actually paid attention, but that's pretty much how she watches movies. So we're good. But to not delay, let's go ahead and get into some nerd news. Couldn't avoid doing that. I'm
a fan of that intro. I approve that intro.
Yeah, until somebody does something better, that's where we're going with it. And so yes, we are going to be talking about some nerd news. Now, if you did not get the news from last week, it is saved, and you will be able to look up that because we had some really interesting stuff going on last week. But this week we've got all new stuff, and let's go ahead and get started. First up, Disney's Peter Pan and Wendy. We got our first trailer, and we also have a premiere date on Disney Plus of April the 28th. We got to see Yara Shahidi as Tinkerbell. They're on the right. The one thing that really concerned me about this was Jude Law as Hook. And I know some people have said anything. I'm willing to just kind of wait and see. Someone said that they weren't trying to give him too much time just so that he didn't look scary. I've always thought of Hook as being like flamboyant and outrageous, and it was just weird to see him so dialed down. But of course, it's Jude Law. I mean, I'm willing to wait and see how it's going to be. What are your thoughts?
All
right, moving on.
They've done this so many times. I mean, I'll watch it, and I'm sorry because I think JJ's like really excited for this, and so I don't want to temper. And I do agree with Mickey. Jude Law can do anything. Who's old enough to remember?
I'm super excited.
Who's old enough to remember? Was it the mid 2000s when Jude Law was doing everything? Remember when he was like his Alfie days? He did Alfie. He did Closer. He had literally like had that run where he was like the man of the year and did like, and then he kind of burned out after that. So I actually probably Jude Law is like the biggest excitement out of this for me, and Yara Shahidi, who I like a lot. But I just feel like the story's been like told. I mean, how many times we've seen this? Like, we need new content, people. We need new stories and ideas. That's where I'm coming. But that's as my trademark says, that's my last thought, and I'm gonna shut up.
I think it was 20th Century Fox before they, way before they were bought. They did a Peter Pan, which was actually, I thought was pretty good. What I thought was really interesting was literally the scene where Hook had captured Tiger Lily, and you hear Hook talking to Peter, and Peter's mimicking Hook's voice. If you closed your eyes, that scene, even though it wasn't done by Disney, the sound of Hook and Peter going back and forth was 100% out of the cartoon. Like it felt like the cartoon's energy and everything else. And then of course we had that movie of where I don't even know what it really was trying to be, with Hugh Jackman in the movie Pan.
Yeah.
Where all of the pirate ditties were like old hits. You had Smells Like Teen Spirit at one point. Like it was interesting. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It's been done a lot. I almost kind of wonder if, like, at some point the guy who did Blood and Honey is going to do like a horror version of Peter Pan, because I think that would be the only like remake of this film that would probably be interesting to watch. But am I going to watch this? Absolutely. But we'll see.
I'll watch it. I mean, I think also like it changes. Like, I think there's something that like if you're a parent, right? I totally agree. Hook was peak. You know, Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman. Hook was great. I think if you're a parent, there's something like, you know, the story that you always want to get where you're sharing with your kid, and you know, there's that error. But I think as someone who is not a parent yet, I've been there, done that, seen it. I'm kind of over it. Like,
there is something about, like, I will tell you right now, when I became a dad, it was only just more excuses for me to watch these movies, because I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I had Wally, I had Cars, I had all of those movies way before my kid ever existed. And it just legitimized, like, people go in like, oh, you have all these Disney movies. Yeah. But I have a kid now. So it's okay. It doesn't matter if I bought them 5 or 10 years before he was born. But, you know.
I also think there's something to the fact of like, so Peter Pan, and I've seen the movie with Johnny Depp that kind of goes into the backstory of the writer of Peter Pan, right?
Finding Neverland.
Yeah. It was written in the early 1900s. I think that's another thing too. Like, this is, again, if you know the business of movies, and then we can move on to the next topic. They're just trying to reuse the IP because it's a famous IP. I also think the movies that you mentioned, Cars, Wall-E, when I have a kid, that'll be a blast to watch. You know, those are fun, new, you know, Inside, if you want to have a tearjerker, Inside Out, you know, all these different things.
Yeah.
Up. I think Peter Pan's it's just kind of like it's a fun story to watch once or twice. I think now if you want to go into different angles and whatnot, I bet you in the past 20 years, we probably have at least half a dozen iterations of this story. You know, if you start with Hook, and then you get Finding Neverland, and then you get the Hugh Jackman one, and then there's another one, and then, you know, so I think it just goes on and on and on. And so, yeah, I mean, I'll definitely watch it. It's just, I think people are really craving, especially with streaming and whatnot, they want fresh stories.
Well, I think that's what worked for Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, because it was different from the norm. And it was right after we got almost a carbon copy of the cartoon from Disney. And then you had this different, darker Pinocchio that kind of went that direction. That's why I say, like, the Blood and Honey director or the writer, if they ever, you know, adapt Peter Pan, that's gonna be where the money is, because it's like you have this kid that can fly and can abduct other children. Like, that's horror, like, incarnate. Let's go for it. You know, so you never know.
So James Matthew Barrie, who wrote Peter Pan, Peter and Wendy, 1911. So that's 115-year-old story. So while it is timeless and classic, and, you know, I'm sure still holds true today, I don't want to be a story snob, but yeah, I think we need new stories.
I agree. So let's go and move on. The next thing we're going to talk about, Star Trek Discovery. Now, this is something that I haven't watched, but just to kind of, like, you know, share the news, Star Trek Discovery is going to be ending the series on the 5th season, which will debut next year in 2024. From what I understand, this is one of the longest running streaming shows, especially for CBS. So
I was waiting for that. JJ's a huge Star Trek fan, JJ's comics, and so I can imagine not excited about this.
But again, but at the same time, a lot of people are saying, okay, you know, we've had stuff, and Picard is ending soon. We're on our final season of Picard, which I honestly want to get into Picard because I'm a big Next Generation fan, but I haven't touched it yet. And I heard, like, the first two seasons were, like, really waning, and now this season is really good as they're ending it off. and I kind of am wanting to get into it because I know it kind of continues on because I really enjoyed the Next Generation movies. So I'm glad that continued on with something, and I will go back and watch it. But of course, Star Trek is a property that is not going to go anywhere, and so I imagine we're going to be able to see, another series coming very shortly. Maybe a spinoff from Discovery or Picard. So we'll see. But definitely worth mentioning because there are people who love it. I was much more of a Star Trek fan than a comic book fan in like the late 90s, early 2000s, just because that was what I was like consuming. And I was a fan of the J.J. Abrams remake because it was a parallel universe or parallel timeline. And which
I forgot about
Chris,
that. That was actually cool. That
Chris,
was a cool story arc. Yeah.
Yeah, and Chris Pine actually has recently come out because they've been trying to make another movie, and he's like he feels like the series is just cursed at this point.
I will say so with this in mind, not Chris Pine on the 13th episode, Chris Pine talking about things being cursed. I think I'm more for this than I am Peter Pan because I think with Star Trek, and we've talked about this in previous shows, they tend to break barriers with their shows. So I know in past Star Trek seasons they had, I forgot her name from Orange is the New Black. She was one of the first female captains. Then you have Sonequa Martin Green here, who obviously is the captain. And then you have, Wilson Cruz. I'm seeing Anthony Rapp on there as well. Like, so I every iteration seems to be pushing the boundaries and the limits. So these things I'm in support of. And I'm looking at the ratings too, really highly. It's in the Rotten Tomatoes, 85%. Google 87%. So it's probably a really good show. I do think 5 seasons is a good run. So yeah, hats off to them, and hopefully they continue. I think, like I said, Star Trek always is creative with their iterations and stuff like that. So I support if something's coming out with different things that we haven't seen before. That's great. I think that's what we need.
Absolutely. So something that you may have been aware about, Michael, because of D23, we did recently just get some images as well as a trailer for the Haunted Mansion, Disney's movie, which this is the second movie that is being done as an adaptation to the ride at Disneyland, Disney World, and Disney's where they have a Haunted Mansion. It definitely looks interesting. I believe Jamie Lee Curtis is in this, but I don't really feel like we saw her in the trailer because I think she plays like Madame Leola or whatever. And then can I just first comment? Danny DeVito looks really good in this film. Like he looks like young and happening, and maybe it's because of
when
like
does Danny
always
DeVito not look good? And
well, he kind of looked like it's always like the Always Sunny like Danny DeVito, where it's kind of like a little bit off. But I think that's just the character. But he definitely looks in good form, and that's all I'm going to say to it. And of course, Owen Wilson, being that he's right now with Marvel, obviously he's going to be able to get casted into other movies in Disney, since that's always a thing. And so he seems to be the very interesting priest that's helping out with the exercising of the haunted house. Did you watch the announcement when you were there, D23?
a little bit. D23 was nuts. So we were on one side and the other side, and I remember when the announcement happened, it was like on the opposite side of the whole convention. They were doing a whole theme park situation. So I saw a little bit of it, and there was a lot of buzz around this. And so, yeah, I'm excited for this. It's something interesting. I can't say I've seen it before, and it looks like a very different, unique take. And a little fun fact here, because I'm looking it up. Danny DeVito is 4'10", which is just treasure, national treasure, my friend. I also forgot that he and Rhea Perlman split in 2017. So I'm seeing that as well, but still doing his thing. God bless him. He's great.
Absolutely. Also, something to just to be aware of if you didn't know this, Regal Cinema is actually doing a promotion right now, starting today until the day of the Oscars. You can go to a Regal Cinema, which they're closing a lot of them, but if you can find one that's there, they're going to be playing the best. Was it the nominated Best Picture films daily? Now it there's
Right.
multiple options per day. It varies by day, so each day it's different. It's never gonna be the same. I remember looking at one of the theater locations. Everything, everywhere, all at once should be in every single day. Honestly, just by name alone, but it's on there twice. There's a couple others that are on there twice.
I see what
But
you
you
did there.
can, yeah, but you can go and watch that film for $6 until the day of the Oscars.
It's the modern day version of the dollar. Remember the dollar movies when we were kids?
Yeah.
And I was just thinking we need something like that. Again, we haven't had that where I mean things have gotten so crazy with prices and then we had COVID and then we had all these issues. And I've said for the longest time, I think Regal and why am I drawing a blank on the other ones?
AMC.
Regal, AMC. I mean, AMC is revamping what they're doing.
Yeah,
It's
at some
hard to-
point, AMC is just going to be starting to sell their tickets on Ticketmaster because with the different tiered seating arrangement is I don't know how I feel about that.
You can always tell when a company is really grasping at straws and struggling. They're just throwing stuff at the wall. And I'm clearly, we had issues during COVID with movies. But even before that, I think, wasn't AMC already struggling? And like, there was that whole, obviously the whole stock situation, hodl for, and that was interesting. I think it is very tough to compete with Cinemark is what, Pooja mentioned. And then you have, I think, Cine Bistro, and then you have iPick, and then you have these places that aren't much more expensive where you can sit down, be comfortable, order food, and have an whole experience. And it's like, I think it's like $20 a ticket, which is basically the same thing as anywhere else. So I do think they need to do something unique and new. And I was just thinking about this from a business perspective. There needs to be a kind of dollar movie experience, because I remember how much fun that was to go as a kid, and like my mom would take us, and like you had the stale popcorn, and it was a much lower grade experience from whatever, but it was also a really good time. So I think there needs to be kind of like that, if that's a play they're doing. So I don't know. Have they done this in past years, or is this the first year we're seeing this? Or
I think they've done some similar things. I know one of the things that Regal has done a lot of is they've leaned into the watching the theater. Was it like Fathom Films, where they like they'll show like things like Hamilton or Phantom of the Opera, or they're also really big on like revamping and like doing a rescreening of Back to the Future, or they're always grasping for something to kind of put butts in seats to kind of bring things in. A little bit different than I would say like AMC. AMC, I don't see that as much. I do know that they do sometimes offer things, and I think the big thing that's working for AMC right now is they're offering merchandising in the theater. So like the big thing, popcorn buckets.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying I'm not a victim of that, but then you have they have like actual merchandise like t-shirts and cups and bowls and all these things, and they've also kind of they're working on their dining experiences and stuff. Like you can go to AMC and get gourmet popcorn, where it's like like salted caramel or cookies and cream.
Yeah.
Or like what they did with me in Quantumania was this stupid. It was almost like a boba tea icy. It was literally like berry. It was called Berry Blast. It was these things like you get like at like Sweet Frog, where it's like these juice balls that when you bite them, they pop, and they put them in watermelon icy. And the most amazing. We got to the night of the movie, and then we went back for my son's birthday, and I was like, you know what? While we're here, while we're shopping, I'm going to go back to AMC and I'm going to go grab another one of those ices. And I end up buying 2 more.
Yeah.
So, like they'll do that kind of stuff, those offerings. And then of course, I think the cinema experience, like you've got the Dolby Cinema, the Dolby Vision, at AMC's. And I think AMC works a little bit more with like the early screening stuff and everything, trying to get, people to rent, and the rentals. The theater rentals are a big thing for them. And I know other places do it, but AMC really is pushing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how I got engaged, was renting at a movie theater. So yeah, I mean, it's you got to create an experience, I think. And I think if you fail on that, you can't just fall back these days on being like, oh, people will come in, especially with COVID. We're living in streaming. We're in a whole different environment. So you definitely have to upgrade that experience. And that's the biggest thing. And so I'm all for stuff like this. I think this is cool. You mentioned the retro screenings too. I think that's fun. If you weren't able to do it, like I remember The Godfather came back in theater, and I think I saw Clockwork Orange for the first time in a movie theater.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm definitely not that old for when it came out, so I saw it was like an anniversary piece, and so it was kind of cool to watch that. So I think and it's good. They're not just resting on their laurels, which is nice. So
yeah,
I'm a fan of this.
Absolutely. All right. So for Marvel Comics, Marvel is actually announced. They've done a trailer. If you go to marvel.com, you can actually find this information. There is a new Guardians of the Galaxy series, run that is starting in April. April the 12th, in that matter. Many of the Guardians have returned. You'll see Nebula, Gamora, Mantis, Drax, and Star-Lord. And it looks like it seems like very much of like a frontier type thing where it's more discovery. But there's something wrong with one of the members of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And it is Groot. Groot is the problem. And it is a warning for Grootfall, which I have no idea. Like I was researching this, and I'm like, because I read a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy, and then when they split in like the 2015 run, I kind of lost interest because like at one point Kitty Pryde's in there, and you had
I hate when they do. I hate when they do that stuff.
You had Flash Thompson as Venom in there, and then like there was like this whole storyline where Venom like goes back to the source, and you find out that Venom was actually the reason why Venom the way it was because it was corrupted. And so it went back, and like you saw like a venomized Groot and a venomized Rocket, and I was just I stopped the story because I was like I can't keep up with this thing.
Yeah.
It does kind of look like an Overwatch Guardians of the Galaxy crossover. I agree with you, Pooja. That's hilarious.
It also looks like a Mortal Kombat ripoff. The art. First thing I thought of when I saw Gamora was like, what's that guy from the original Mortal Kombat with the 6 arms?
Goro.
Goro, the pentultimate villain, not the number 1, but he's the guy that gets the guy.
And then you knew Capcom was struggling with their characters because they just put hair, like long hair, on Goro and made the female version.
So good.
But I'm glad to see the Guardians back together. I don't know what's going on with Grootfall, because there's like Grootfall and Groot Space, and I'm like, okay, I will probably tune in to read this. But see, my favorite run will always.
Where's JJ?
This is under. I got this. So this run is under Colin Kelly, Jackson Lansing, and Kev Walker.
There we go with Ken with the. It's not bad.
Beat me like by 5 seconds.
Grootfall.
Yeah, they did. They did Captain America Sentinel of Liberty, I think it was. So yeah, I mean, it'll probably get me to want to read it again. But see, I loved the Guardians of the Galaxy way before the movies came out. Like I didn't mind the improvements to the way the characters looked after the movies, because like even Star-Lord, like
The original Star Lord. I mean, he looks the original Star Lord. Is it from Marvel previews? That art for that is it's really funny, and he definitely wasn't a Guardian to begin with. It was like the man who stalked the skies, and he looks it was like the 70s, right? Marvel preview number 4. Marvel preview presents, and he looks like, you know who he looks like originally? I've always wondered about this. He looks like the guy from Zack Snyder, Watchmen, Owlman.
Okay. Yeah, I can see
and
that.
He does not. Yeah, they definitely. I mean, look, classic is classic, but they definitely improved on the Star-Lord look.
Yeah, the comic update from the MCU was definitely needed. But I loved that run. I loved there was a whole run where the Guardian, like what was it? Star-Lord and Drax are in a completely different like dimension with Thanos, and you can't die. And so literally they're just killing each other, like all like just irritating. Like it was just the most fun like story. And then you have like the whole time where like Star-Lord's being like is being like tortured by Gamora because she realizes that he spared like Thanos' life. Like there are all of these different things that I just loved about like the characters and the thing. And then there was that moment where Tony Stark went into space, and I was okay with, because he was knocked down a couple pegs with Gamora. So it was definitely an interesting story. But I'll watch this. I'll read it. I'll probably be in line to get a copy of number 1.
Grootfall.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that part, but I just want to see the Guardians together.
Hopefully Adele does the theme song to Grootfall. Be excited about that.
And it's all I Am Groot. She's just singing
Also,
I Am Groot in different
Why
tones.
does Groot look like an ant or a praying mantis too in this art? Like, doesn't he kind of look like
from the way and I'm sorry, because the way that it edited this, he's giant. Like it's almost like it's from what I pictured of it, it's kind of like a Galactus version of Groot. But I don't know the whole. Yes, Tony did. Okay, Paperwaiter Tim is talking about when Tony Stark was in space with he was extremely humbled, let's just say. And if you don't know what we're talking about, go read that comic. Go back and read. Yeah. I think it's like the 2012, 2013 run. So it's like it was right before they came. Literally, the Guardians of the Galaxy were only like this version of the Guardians team that we see in the movies was only out for like, what was it, 8 or 9 months before they even started writing for them. Like, they were a very early in the comics. It's kind of like Kamala Khan when you think about it, because like she's only been around since like 2017. So 2014.
Well, the original Guardians only appeared at the end of Guardians 2, like the ones with Stallone and
Stakar,
Miley Cyrus,
and Martin X, and which if you didn't know, Martin X is played by Michael Rosenbaum, who was Lex Luthor on Smallville.
Yes.
Everybody doesn't know that.
I was just about to look up all the actors that were out, because I know Miley Cyrus.
Michelle Yeoh.
Oh wow, I didn't know about that. That's great.
She plays 2 characters in the MCU. She plays one of the Guardian, or one of the Ravager team, and then she plays the aunt for Shang-Chi.
Michelle Yeoh. Another one of those like ones that's just like catching later in life. And I think we're all here for it. Like it's great. Like Michelle Yeoh, she kind of was it Crazy Rich Asians is what was like, not, again, she's been acting for a long time, but like one of the first, like, I want to say modern mainstream ones that kind of like catapulted her. And she's really just been like steamrolling the industry ever since.
Well, yeah, and I think that was the thing. I think Crazy Rich Asians also gave this idea that you didn't have to do stereotypes with a people group. It's funny because if you think about like how we progressed from there, like Crazy Rich Asians gave more complex story, and it was very well done. I think it helped spawn a lot of people's careers, or just continue, lining the pockets of some of them. And then like it's even like little subtle things, like we didn't have a yellow tent lens on the Egyptian scenes in Moon Knight, because you realize they always tinted Egypt with a yellow lens.
Is
Like-
that such? I mean, is that a like a categorizing grouping thing, or is that like someone came up with the bright idea of like, hey, to show how hot it is, and they're like, we got to put a layer and a film over it. I mean, I wonder what I wonder what the backstory of that is. And I know we're getting off topic, but the last thing I will say is I listened to, it was for Tribeca Film Festival one year. J.J. Abrams spoke, and I love these, like, this is way off topic, but I love these storylines. Do you know why? So obviously, for people that know J.J. Abrams, like his signature is the light flare. And so he was like, the way he was explaining it, and I mean, at this point, whatever. He's like, it's that the movie is so powerful and there's so much power, it's like coming off the screen. And he was saying, like, I think it was Star Trek 2 where he got a lot of backlash. The second Star Trek,
there was so much.
There were so many life.
It was like there was lens flare. Oh yeah, and then there was cast members. Like I think the lens flare had more time on screen.
Oh yeah,
even Super 8. Like, and it was just like,
oh yeah. And he admitted he was interviewed by Chris Rock, which is, imagine that, for Tribeca, and it was like Tribeca Talks. And I remember him saying, I mean, those are great, like where you just got to sit and watch them discuss like their careers and stuff. But he said, he's like, we realized at that point where we're like, this is getting ridiculous, and they stopped it because they were like, it was just everywhere. But at least he laughed about it, and it was funny. So I wonder, I know it's a long way to get back to this, but I do wonder, like, the yellow lens, is that like with some directors like bonehead thing to be like, how do I show how hot it is in there, like years ago? And they were like, well, just make it all look like yellow and it feels like it's the sun. And I don't know.
I think there was something that was put in. I remember a lot of people were happy that it wasn't put into Moon Knight. I think the concern is, it gives it this foreign feel, and they again, it's like, if you put it, what do we always say? You put a person in the wrong lens, and like it's a saying. We cast this concept, and then people go places expecting something like that, and I don't know. It's one of those things where it's kind of like we're in 2023. We should be moving on from doing some things that people think were appropriate, like, people playing Asian characters that weren't Asian, and vice, all that kind of stuff. But I digress.
What was the I mean, like, if you think about, like, honestly, movies that aren't that ancient, like everyone always brings up Breakfast at Tiffany's, but that's at least like what, 60, 70 years old. We got Soul Man. So we got C. Thomas Howell doing blackface, that's what, 30 years old? It's not 30, 40 years old. And then what was something recently I was watching where I was like, how did this get made? Or the part of it, like, how did this make it past? And it was like, I think it was like a 10, 15-year-old movie. And I was like, this is nuts. Like, how did no one raise their hand to say this is a terrible idea? We should not be doing this.
Or you would have a person of color that was a token character. Like, they were just in, like, I was going back because, my kid Wally, liking Wally, and a byproduct of liking Wally, my son also likes Hello Dolly, because they use the music from Hello Dolly a lot in the film. And so we watched it. And there is literally only one black person that I saw in the film, and he sings at, like, the big dinner near the end. Like, that's I almost feel like they probably thought, oh, we're doing something here. This is something great. No, it's not. It just, you're basically, devaluing people by saying that this is the only thing that there would be worth for doing. But it's like we could go on for a while, so let's go ahead and, let's move on. We'll shut up now. But for those of you who love horror and have been hoping to see characters like Freddy Krueger and Jason and Ghostface on a movie screen, Dead by Daylight is going to be making a movie. The 2016 video game, and I'm all satire of what I just said. This game was designed as a horror film, a survivor game, based off of basically all the movie tropes of, you've got to survive the killer by daylight. They had a bunch of original characters, but then later on, Dead by Daylight got a lot of licenses, which is why I joked about the Jason Voorhees and the Freddy Krueger, because you can play those characters, and they are James Wan and Blumhouse. And if you don't know James Wan, Conjured 2, Annabelle,
James Wan's great.
All of the he's done a lot. He's done a lot of horror. Some great, some not so great. He did. There was another one he did recently. When I was on the Real Study, we reviewed it. I can't remember what it is now. The Void. Was really creepy.
He did a lot of action too. So it's not just like you said, The Conjuring and stuff like that. He was a big action guy for a while. He did do 1 or 2 Fast movies, right? I'm pretty sure.
I believe so. Yes, he did. I think he stopped, messing with it after, I think, the 5th one. Like, he was in it until
Let's see. James Wan. He is, yeah. I mean, did he do Megan? No, he did Megan. The movie that I told Pooja that I would absolutely not see. Oh, he did Aquaman too. Not Aquaman 2, Aquaman also. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean Aquaman 2, which I'm really excited about. I mean, I can't wait for that. He did.
There is a second movie coming out.
He did Furious 7. Yeah. He does. Yeah, I guess he did do a lot. So there's Jigsaw, which, so there's a couple saws in there. Yeah, he likes to do a lot of random stuff. There's definitely a lot of I always thought of him as more as an action guy, but I guess he has Mortal Kombat. I guess he really has done more gore and horror than action. And I guess must have been Fast 7. The unforgettable, legendary Fast 7 that he did. I guess I read him the wrong way. Sorry, James Wan, that I thought you were more of an action guy than a horror man.
Yeah,
you're going back to your roots. This is great to see.
Yeah, and then he didn't do Fate of the Furious, which is why I kind of didn't care about the movie, I guess, in a sense. But for those of you who are wondering, if you have ever wondered what would happen if Dora the Explorer had to deal with xenomorphs,
just looking at
you're in luck. You're in luck. Of course, 20th Century Studios is making a Alien film, and Isabella Merced, who also played Dora the Explorer. I always want to say Dora the Explorer, but it's Dora the Explorer. She is going to be a part of the film, along with Kaylee Spaney as the leads. This is being directed by Fede Alvarez. Ridley Scott is producing, but not directing. And before you get your hopes up, this is continuing the prequel story with Ridley Scott. So, and here's the thing. This is the thing. So we had Prometheus. We had Covenant. From what I understand,
I don't even think I watched Covenant. It was just like so. Whatever. It's another.
Michael Fassbender was in it. That was my sale. But according to this, so we've had Covenant, we've had Prometheus.
Is
Covenant.
Fassbender still in there? I mean, I remember he was like a droid that was killed, but then he
there was another version of him, and then the other one that it's a long story. This movie is supposedly being called, and this is rumored, I think it's Alien Romulus.
Okay.
I don't know. I'll watch it because I'm an Alien fan and I am a glutton for punishment.
Oh, I'll definitely watch it. It's just like, it's again, like this is another one where it's like, and no offense to anybody who, again, people that like it, again, no offense, right? But it's also like, why?
I honestly feel like at this point, the story that the looming idea of the space jockey in the first Alien, which we now know are the engineers, I feel like it kind of like it's gotten muddled. It's almost like a Terminator Genesis type thing. Like I don't know. Romulus, they stole it from. Well, listen, Star Trek stole it from space. Okay, it's one of those.
So
Isn't there a Romulus like
I'll lighten up this movie that's gonna also just be terrible, but I'll lighten that up with the best story I can tell. So James Cameron, right? Wait, was he involved with Aliens?
He did
too?
Aliens.
No.
He did Aliens. Yes.
Aliens. Yeah. So after Alien success, there was this whole like meeting at the studio to talk about like what movies would be successful and come up and whatever. James Cameron walks over and someone had Alien. It was like a poster or whatever that was like, past whatever. And he's like, I got an idea. And he writes and puts a $sign after N for like an S. And he goes, Aliens. And then it makes it a $sign. And then they made Aliens. And so there's your reasoning behind it. There's the reason for these continuing to come out. And that's all I have to say about that.
Now this might be a hot take. I believe Alien was the better film, but I love Aliens more.
Okay.
Aliens, I don't know what it is. It's like I would have to beg my cousins when they came over if my mom didn't go with me. When we went to this is going to date me. I hate saying this. When we would go to Errol's or Errol's before it became Blockbuster, I would beg them to take me because I couldn't check it out myself because I was under 17. And they were like, "Are you sure?" And I probably rented that movie more than any other movie that I've ever rented. Like that movie, as soon as I could own it in my collection, I owned it. And I own it on Laserdisc, Blu-ray, and DVD.
They're really good movies. And I same thing with the Terminator movies, TNT too. And then
there's nothing after that.
And then they butchered the crap out of it.
At some point, the Terminators need to come back in time and stop them from making more Terminator films. That's all they should do.
John Connor. Terminator at one point, and no, I'm not.
Yeah, and let's talk about burying the lead.
I'm not giving you a stupid spoiler warning for that. Whatever.
No, listen, you don't have to spoiler warning it. They actually revealed that in the trailers before the movie came out.
No, I don't remember that.
They literally showed John Connor as a Terminator in the trailers before. Okay, we're going to keep moving on. And it's it can't get any worse than having another Aliens film if it's going to be bad. Oh, wait, yes, it can, because there's going to be a series.
Well, this is where I'm actually not against. If you're going to create IP and you're going to use intellectual property to make money and whatever, just make it a darn series. Like, it's fine. Like, we'll watch it. These movies that are god awful, that you're just doing it either to extend the license. For people that don't know, the reason why the Spider-Man movies keep getting rebooted, even when they don't do well, is that I think depending on the deal you strike, IP usually is like a patent. Like, if you lose it after 7 years, if you don't use it, you do lose it. And so that's why the Spider-Man movies, Sony will never let that expire because it is the most valuable IP in the world by far, bar none. So this is fine. I mean, I'd watch this. It's fine. And whatever. But the movie that's continuing this, and then it's almost like Fast 10. What?
At some point, Dom is going to come out and is going to be on and do it. It's going to happen. We're going to have the Fast and Furious going to be fighting aliens at some point. Just a quick correction. JJ said Romulus is a planet and species in Star Trek, but Romulus is also the name of an emperor in Rome. That's where they got the name. Is the legendary founder and first king of Rome, Romulus. So being Ridley Scott and everything else, that would be where they kind of get the name from, because it makes no sense whatsoever. Prometheus, I think was a Greek reference, or it was a Roman reference.
Well, so if we want to look at the other end of it too, right? So Prey was a new way to bring in the Predator series, right? Essentially, right? Not crossing paths with this, right? Yeah,
with Predators, yes.
So we have Alien versus Predator, it's fine. And then there was the comic book in the 90s and the 80s. It was Batman versus Predator. That was a great one actually. So I think we're gonna get some comments on that one. That's a fan favorite. But I think like again, like if you were gonna do it, just have a new air to it. Like have a nice fresh take on it that we want to watch. Like obviously Prey was a resounding success. People love it, and so yeah, again, that's where I think like
it's so weird because if you really go back and think about it, there's really nothing new. The term prey for a Predator film immediately, like I remember back in the 90s reading a Predator novel. It was called Alien versus Predator Prey. And like literally one of the characters in it was so okay. So the Aliens versus Predator movie, the first one, the female lead that ends up, basically, earning her rights as a predator. She is very similar to the character in Alien versus Predator Prey. But what's funny is with this film, with this series on Earth, everyone can hear you.
Or are you talking about the comic? Was the
no? I'm talking about the movie. I'm talking about the movie.
Yeah, it was. Wait, the one who earned it. It's not. Wait, that's done. Is because she's Sana Lathan. She's great. So yeah, when you said that, I remembered like who it was. But yeah, continue. Sorry.
But if you go back and read the novel, like her character is very similar to that character in the movie. Now they're taking from this series that this is the first time aliens have been on Earth. They've been brought to Earth. So that means if you weren't already confirmed that they're not going with the canon of Alien versus Predator and they're throwing that out, I'm sorry to let you know they're throwing that out. Alien versus Predator is not canon to. I'm so tired of talking about canon. Is not canon.
When did that stop being canon?
I think the day after it came out.
I try to do like a fake. I'm tired. It's been a long week. I'm tired. I try to do like a fake, like excitement or interest in the fact that Alien versus Predator wasn't canon or whatever.
Did you ever watch Requiem
for a Dream?
No.
Oh no. Alien.
AVP Requiem.
No, I did not watch that one.
You're not the Pred Alien that was at the. Oh my goodness!
No, I did not watch
so much. But yeah, so it's gonna be a series. With this series, now there is some positives. Being that it's a TV series, there is a potential that they are going to use more practical effects than they are going to do, like CGI. Which in that case, they have the ability to do some of the best suspenseful horror with the aliens and bring it back to its roots, which could be a very good thing. This is being written and produced by Nola Hawley. So Disney is basically officially saying that this is not that the AVP movies are not canon to this stuff. So, but that's it.
Wait. Time out. Pause. Take it back a second. I love how the authority on this, which obviously the studio owns everything, but you're like Disney is saying. Would you ever thought Disney is gonna be the authority on Alien versus Predator? Like where did that come from?
You have Mickey Mouse. Oh, we're not doing this one.
Like it's so weird, but okay.
Listen, when you've collected all of the studios and the properties like Disney has, all you have to do is snap your finger, and it's not canon. I keep thinking about those memes that they used to have where it was the Infinity Gauntlet with Mickey, and it's got like Lucasfilm and 20th Century Studios and Marvel and Pixar and
they're redoing all the comics too. I mean, but they've had Marvel for 20 years, or 30 years, right? But they're redoing all the classic comics with like the Mickey characters too, and I bought, and so they got me hook, line, and sinker. I think I got the Mickey with the Infinity Gauntlet on the cover. I'm just like, whatever, I'll take it.
But let's go ahead and leave this on a positive note. I have one piece of news that I didn't give you on the update when we were getting this started. And that is that if you did not know, Detective Pikachu is getting a sequel, and we do have a director attached to it now. Jonathan Crystal, who is the creator of Portlandia. That's all I know. I've not seen it, so I don't know anything about it.
Portlandia or the
I didn't know about Portlandia at all.
Oh, great show. Why am I blanking on the duo? Oh, come on. Hold on.
Help us in the comments.
Man, I am literally gonna kick myself. SNL star Fred Armisen. So it's Fred Armisen and Carrie Brownstein. They're great together. And then you have Kyle MacLachlan as the it's a really it's in a, I think it's an acquired taste. It's very, very, very like it's very Fred Armisen. Like classic. It's like textbook Fred Armisen. I've actually been to an event where Fred Armisen was the musical guest. He's just like zany, weird, and out there. Well, I also think he's the musical act for. Is it for what? Seth Meyers?
You've lost me.
I think he's like the. You know how like the shows always have like a musical.
Oh yeah.
Branford Marsalis and the Tonight Show band, and they have whatever. Yeah. Fred Armisen is the musical like front man for Late Night with Seth Meyers. Like just a bizarre thing. I mean, he's obviously a multi-talented guy, like writer, musician, actor, whatever. But yeah, I mean, Portlandia is great. Right. If they do a Portland, it fits right in with this whole storyline. So I'm game for that.
Yeah, well, that's great. So that ends our news segment. I'm sorry, I had to be cheesy and do it.
That's good.
This part of the show is also
very excited that it was under an hour, which is epic. We just made it by 2 minutes, you guys. We did it.
The show's not even over yet, though. That's the problem. But just to let you know, this show has been brought to you by Nerd Initiative. And if you want some of the merchandise, by all means, we would love to have you check it out. You check out our merch store and see some of that amazing swag. And if you send a picture of it to us, we'll look at it.
We'll post it. Wait, let's make it clear now. You guys send us pictures and post pictures. We will show you wearing our swag for sure. Even the ones we sent for free, which has been mostly all of our swag. So yeah, send us some stuff. We'll share it. It'd be great.
So on top of everything that we're doing, we also have another character segment brought to you by Paperweight Entertainment, Cell Phone Wallet Keys, and the Caption Life. They've done a great job with these things, and of course, this one's a special one because it's actually the anniversary for a special character.
Iron Man. Thanks to the success of the MCU and the career-defining performance of Robert Downey Jr., most people have a pretty firm grasp of the character of Tony Stark and Iron Man. But here are some things you may not have known. Tony Stark has died or faked his death nearly a dozen times, including once killing Iron Man to absolve himself of any wrongdoing during his armor wars. The most controversial of these deaths came when it was revealed that Tony Stark was a sleeper agent put in place by Kang the Conqueror during the formation of the Avengers. After killing 3 people, including Rita Damara, Yellowjacket, the Avengers recruited an alternate timeline teenage version of Tony Stark to help battle Iron Man and Kang. At the sight of his younger self, Tony gained control of his mind long enough to sacrifice himself to stop Kang. Iron Man's armor once gained sentience. After being discovered to be Iron Man, Tony relapsed into alcohol once again. After a drunken fight with the Mandarin, Tony suffered a heart attack and the armor flew him to safety. Initially believing that a living armor could be a benefit, Tony worked alongside the suit. However, the armor became more and more aggressive, killing at will, and Tony realized that he had to put an end to it. During the final confrontation with the sentient armor on a desert island, Tony suffered another heart attack. The suit sacrificed its own existence to its creator to craft an artificial heart that saved Tony's life. Iron Man once battled Dr. Doom alongside King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. When Tony discovered the illegal sale of his technology to Dr. Doom, he confronted Doom in Latveria. During his attack, Iron Man and Dr. Doom were flung back in time to the days of Camelot. Iron Man joined forces with King Arthur and his knights, while Doom made a deal with Morgan Le Fay to lead her undead army. After Le Fay's defeat, Doom vowed vengeance on Iron Man, but agreed to a temporary truce, and, using components from both of their armors, the two built a time machine and escaped back to the present. Iron Man celebrates his 60th anniversary this week, and whether he's battling supervillains or his own demons, he has been entertaining readers since 1963. Happy anniversary, Shellhead, and here's to another 60 years.
Awesome.
Amazing.
I love the Doom aspect of it too, because I mean, it wasn't until the scene where it's like, oh, they sacrificed parts of their suits. So I'm like, man, they had so much in common. I mean, there's a couple of iconic covers that come to mind with Iron Man battling off against Doom, but yeah, there's a reason why he's one of the most popular Marvel characters, and there's a reason why Doom is one of those popular villains.
And those are some of the very interesting ones. I mean, there's even like the Extremis storyline. There's the Darkhold suit. Like there are so many versions. Like with Tony, like things that like Tony did really well. Tony did terribly. I mean, you know, we've had him as AI. We got
Civil War 2 where Captain Marvel knocked him into a coma, and
and then there's the whole thing where he loses his Stark Industries because they find out that he's potentially either a clone or he's a robot, and he can't be like sure if he's the original Tony Stark, and so he loses his company for a time. And that, of course, there was like right after the whole what was it, Secret Wars, the last Secret Wars that they had, where Peter Parker was richer than Tony Stark. Crazy stuff.
Well, Spider-Man is very rich, not gonna lie.
Yeah, rich in problems.
I'm actually surprised that he's only. So what that means is, so Iron Man came out after Spider-Man, because Spider-Man celebrated his 60th last year, right? So, because I mean, that was the big thing at Comic-Con. So Tales of Suspense 39 came out. That's really surprising. I thought.
Yeah, I think no, because
always thought that he was like not older because he's older, but I always thought that he was. I mean, it's funny when you think of those Silver Age books, like what the timeline is, but that's March 1963. That's a new thing to me as a vintage comic fan who loves it. I can't believe Spider-Man was before Iron Man. That's bizarre. That's crazy to think of. Because I mean, Fantastic Four was the first real. It was the first team, but it was also the first real heroes that came from
with problems.
Silver Age Marvel.
Yeah,
well, Silver Age Marvel, I think, like the Stan Lee era. Like we have different Human Torch in the Golden Age. We have Namor, which is the same Namor. Same.
Yeah, which surprisingly, Namor predates like Timely in a sense, because Namor wasn't originally a Marvel property. It was part of like a whole group of comics that were being marketed to theaters. And so when you went to the theater, you were going to get this free pamphlet, and in it was going to be Namor the Submariner. And when the movie theaters decided not to move forward with the comics, the guy who had the rights to them didn't want to just throw it away and not get paid for it. And so he literally went to Martin Goodman and said, "Hey, I'll sell you these." And he basically sold them for really cheap. But then Goodman gave him like a small salary that he would come in weekly to pick up like a thank you payment for these characters. Wow. And then later on, the guy like regretted even selling them and wanted to keep them because it was Namor and Kazor.
Yeah, Kazar. Yeah, Kazar. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Kazar. And Namor was. You think Namor is problematic now? Namor was just like he hated Earth people or land people, and just killing people and destroying things, and it was interesting.
Yeah, and he joined together with Cap and other people for to fight, Hitler and Nazi Germany and whatnot. But other than that, he really was a villain sometimes. But even the Human Torch, the first Human Torch was an android. It was bizarre. I mean, those stories are bizarre, but amazing at the same time, because it's just, again, that's 80 years ago of history, where it's just cool to think back and look at that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Tales of Suspense 39, that we talked about this a while back. There was a major auction, and one of the pieces of original art that was sold, I think it was sold for well over $100,000, was the original art of when Tony gets the shrapnel in his heart from
wow.
Yeah. But the problem with that piece of art is, I can picture it in my mind's eye. It's black and white because obviously it's the original art. And so you see this, like, he's wearing like a hat, it's classic, 60s attire and stuff. And so that happens, but I think it's the Mandarin's in there, and we talked about racist, things changing. It's bad. And so I think I was talking to Derek about this. We were talking about, obviously Derek's a huge Iron Man fan. I'm like, whoever has that, do you put it up? Do you not? Like, in that same, it is a very, very racist depiction of that, part of the world. And so, but it's history. And it's super cool because it's Iron Man's first appearance. But,
Well, even like when you saw when Tony was in the cave building the suit with Ho Yinsen, it was very the stereotypical look, and like it was like
so
under
much.
occupation of the Vietnamese, and like it fed into the era. And of course, that's the great part about these stories. Yes, you acknowledge them, and like especially like we talk about representation, and we talk about like addressing things. One of the things that I thought was very classy about Simu Liu, when he was when he does like his signings and stuff for Shang-Chi, he will not sign certain runs of Shang-Chi because of how racist they are, and they tell you that ahead of time, and it sparks that conversation, which I think is very important.
Yeah.
But
first appearance of Shang-Chi is incredibly racist.
Yeah.
And I think it's another one of those like Marvel premiere things. Let me see. It's one of those compilation books. Special Marvel edition, which features the hands of Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, and it is about as stereotypical as possible. And wait, so Derek jumped in. Wong Chu so it wasn't the Mandarin, it was Wong Chu as the villain. It was a North Vietnamese warlord. It is bad. If you Google Tales of Suspense 39, and you'll see it's like it is on par with Mickey Rooney Breakfast at Tiffany's depiction. Like, he's just animated, and it's literally ripped from stereotypes, and but again, this is 1963, so this was still, back then it was yeah.
I agree, and it's one of those things where it's very interesting. It was very interesting that you look at the stories, and you see where they've come from, and then you see where they've gone, and I think a lot of the writers and everything, they kind of learn over time. I think that's the part. It's progress. It's just like with the MCU, with Marvel Studios. They played it safe at the beginning of Marvel, of the MCU, and they tried to make a formula that worked. They were avoiding certain things. I think that's why we didn't get Black Panther early on, because when Marvel first proposed the MCU to, what was it, to Chase Bank, I think it was, or to Citibank, Black Panther was on the cover. Like, he was first and foremost.
Yeah.
And they wagered this bet of the MCU on these properties. They would, if the MCU wouldn't have worked, Marvel would have never been able to make another movie again. Like, it would have been in the hands of somebody else. Someone else would have had the rights. It would have been over. But again, even though they had these properties and they want to run with them, they waited so long to bring these characters in
Yeah.
that it's one of those things where you learn from it and you do better and you have better representation. And we're in a process of progress.
Yeah.
But we're also we want to talk about something else tonight. Tonight we want to touch on The Mandalorian season 3. There's a lot to cover. It was a lot in one episode. We're gonna do some spoilery stuff. But before we do that, we're gonna let Mickey take over and give a great breakdown on the history of the Mandalorians. Once I can get it going.
What's up, Fandoms? It's your boy Mickey, also known as Cell Phone Wallet Keys on social media. And with season 3 of The Mandalorian underway, I thought we would take the time to talk about the current canon history of the Mandalorian people up till now. So what we know about the Mandalorians in the current canon starts back in the animated series, The Clone Wars. The Mandalorians originated on the planet of Mandalore, obviously. And these early people lived in tribes, which evolved into clans and then houses. Kind of think of Game of Thrones with House Stark and House Lannister. Having the right last name made a big difference. Clans were in perpetual conflict, which led to advances in combat skills and weaponry. As Mandalorians began to expand and conquer surrounding planets, they formed their own system. Even with this massive amount of real estate, power struggles were all too common. Even Mandalorians venturing far away from the system to outside worlds couldn't escape the feudal and warring ways of their society. But no matter how far off they traveled, they remained a closed-off society, keeping their culture and drama to themselves. Eventually, Mandalore expanded so far that they ran into the Jedi. And these two cultures mixed like oil and water, and the Jedi-Mandalorian Wars began. The Jedi's lightsaber training and force capabilities gave them quite the upper hand against the Mandalorians at first. Mandalorians began mining for a special ore on their planet and their moon Concordia. This of course led to Beskar, an extremely light metal that could withstand a direct lightsaber blow and could be passed along for generations. It was also around this time that the first Mandalorian had been inducted into the Jedi Order, Tar Vizsla, who also crafted the Darksaber. Vizsla would obviously leave the Order due to the wars, going home to lead his people and form House Vizsla. And if that name sounds familiar, it should. You've already met heavy infantry Mandalorian Paz Vizsla. So between the aftermath of the Jedi-Mandalorian War and constant conflict between the clans, the planet of Mandalore was left uninhabitable. To continue surviving on their home planet, they had to build domed structures that could support great life support systems. And for almost the next 1,000 years, clans continued to war with each other. And over this time, leadership became weaker and the Darksaber was lost and forgotten. So a few years before the events of Episode 1, a new government would rise to power in Mandalore, the New Mandalorians. This was a democratic group trying to steer their people in a peaceful direction. And as you could imagine, this was difficult. It was very difficult to consolidate power. And so began the Mandalorian Civil War. As you can imagine, the Jedi were interested in a peaceful Mandalore, so they sent Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi to the planet to assist the new Mandalorians. This would actually lead to Kenobi forming a romantic relationship with the leader of the new Mandalorians, Duchess Satine Kryze. So with the help of the Jedi, the new Mandalorians were able to win this civil war and ban the opposing clans to their moon, Concordia. The most important of those clans being Death Watch, led by Pre Vizsla and Duchess Satine's sister, Bo-Katan. But for once in the history of Mandalore, things were flourishing in a peaceful era. Duchess Satine was a smart and educated ruler, and her negotiation skills were good enough to keep them neutral during the Clone Wars. But soon the Separatists would make a move for power on Mandalore by funding Death Watch. And with the support of Prime Minister Almec, Death Watch would make an attempt to remove Duchess Satine from power. This gave Death Watch a strong claim to leadership, as they had three things going for them. They had a Kryze as their lieutenant, they had a Vizsla as their leader, and that Vizsla was in possession of the Darksaber. As this conflict raged on, Mandalore's power struggle became an opportunity for another power player, Darth Maul. Maul saw Mandalore as an opportunity to exact revenge against Obi-Wan Kenobi and his former master, Darth Sidious. And as the leader of his own crime syndicate, the Shadow Collective, he made allies with Death Watch. The results of this union were the death of Duchess Satine and thousands of Mandalorian citizens. The Shadow Collective betrayed Death Watch, and Darth Maul killed Pre Vizsla and claimed the Darksaber and leadership of the people of Mandalore. And no longer being a neutral system, Mandalore became a battleground in the Clone Wars. Hurt by the death of her sister and swearing that no outsider should be allowed to rule Mandalore, Bo-Katan created her own freedom fighters, the Night Owls. They set out on healing Mandalore without compromising their proud ancient ways. Eventually, Ahsoka Tano would join Bo-Katan and her freedom fighters in reclaiming Mandalore. Ahsoka would even help negotiate support from the Galactic Republic. They would ultimately defeat Darth Maul and his Shadow Collective, but during the battle, we saw the rise of the Galactic Empire. Palpatine was now Emperor, and Mandalore was under his control. With the opposing military might of the Empire, Mandalore could not oppose this occupation. Palpatine chose a Mandalorian, Gar Saxon, formerly of Darth Maul's Shadow Collective, as his viceroy to cement Imperial authority over Mandalore. Most Mandalorians harbored ill will towards the Empire as this new era of peace was being violently forced upon them. Even so, the Mandalorian people were resistant to join the Rebel Alliance as they were not fond of uniting under one banner. But with the presence of Sabine Wren among leaders of the movement, there were sparks of hope. The Wren clan, with the support of Fenn Rau and Bo-Katan, managed to unite the Mandalorian people against the Empire. In the climax of this battle, Sabine Wren defeated Gar Saxon in battle and claimed the Darksaber. With Imperial rule on Mandalore broken and her people free, Sabine Wren had no interest in power. She handed over the Darksaber to Bo-Katan, who accepted it willingly. But the Darksaber must be won in battle, and the consequences of this were prophesied by the Armorer.
Mandalore will be laid to waste, and its people scattered to the four winds.
And that's exactly what happened. The Empire returned in greater numbers, led by the ruthless Moff Gideon, and bombed all of Mandalore in what is known as the Night of 1,000 Tears. Mandalore was decimated in every way, causing the Great Mandalorian Dysphoria. What little Mandalorians survived scattered across the galaxy, living in small converts and laying low, like the Children of the Watch, led by the Armorer on the planet Navarro. It was clear that Mandalorian culture was at risk of extinction, and they would have to reinvent themselves. During the Clone Wars, Death Watch had already began the practice of adopting outsiders into the creed, calling them foundlings. One such example of this is actually Din Djarin. And with their numbers dwindling now, they would begin that practice again. Now foundlings, even those of alien species, would be the future of the Mandalorian people. Now a new battle for the control of Mandalore has been set in motion. News of the defeat of Moff Gideon at the hands of the new wielder of the Darksaber is headed to Mandalore. And he just happens to be an apostate. Din Djarin may just be seeking redemption for himself, but Bo-Katan, the Children of the Watch, and Moff Gideon all seek the power to control the future of Mandalore. I hope you enjoyed that little journey on the current history of the Mandalorians with me. Again, my name is Mickey, also known as Cell Phone Wallet Keys. I hope you have an amazing night. And Fandoms, I love you. You're looking beautiful, baby. Back to you, Tony and Michael.
I feel like we should like have called that like breaking down the Mandalorians with our Star Wars historian. That was good. That was really good.
Professor CWK.
Was that? It's about Professor CWK. I like that.
No, that was really good. It's good to kind of know. I mean, man, there's so much history behind it. That's what Star Wars is great with doing. It's like all the backstory and the winding side tales, and it's crazy. It's a lot.
Well, it's that time. We've actually done really well with our time frame, so I am very happy to do this. So if you are sensitive to sounds, please plug your ears. And now you have been warned. If you have not seen Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 1, you need to get out of here. You need to go watch it, kiss your kids, and watch The Mandalorian. It's not super long, and it was actually very good. But we are going to talk about it. We're not going to hold back on, discussing what we really.
It was
liked.
like a 35-minute episode, right? It wasn't long at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we found. Let me ask you: did you feel like that opening was a flashback at first?
Yeah, actually, I did. Yeah. I thought it was, and then I realized it wasn't.
I really thought that, like, there was a couple of things I was struggling with, like the heavy gunner Mandalorian. Like, I was like, how old is this dude? Like, if he's with Din Djarin as he's a kid, and then
that's what we thought. We all thought it was Din Djarin, right? Like, and I was like, oh, cool. They're showing how he came to be, and then you're like, wait, no, he comes in and saves the day essentially, and then of course, no one wants him to save the day because he's an apostate.
Yeah.
And which is, we'll see. The question is, will season 3 end with him bathing in the waters beneath, the surface of Mandalore and being reborn? Probably, right? I mean, or not. Actually, I pull that back. Because there could be some kind of alternate thing where he's like, I don't need it. I'm a Mandalorian at heart. I don't need to bathe in the waters. And this is and he's like, this is the way. So I mean, that could be another way to end.
Yeah, like literally, he gets there, he's about to dip his toe in the waters, and he's like, no, and then just walks away. Like that would be pretty. That would be pretty tough.
Great.
No, but so we have the ritual, just like Mickey said. The numbers had dwindled when we last saw the armorer and that heavy gunner. There was just the 2 left. All of the others were gone, and we saw them in the Book of Boba Fett. Now, from what I understand, the way they've described this from seasons 1 and 2 happened in the span of years. And then from season 2 to season 3, I think there's been at least 2 years, because Grogu was with Luke for 2 years in training, until he went back with him during the Book of Boba Fett. And so it's not a surprise that the Mandalorians have grown in numbers, not a lot of numbers, but at least enough to have like a semblance of a group. And
fight a dinosaur that comes out of the water,
like a giant and of course you have I feel like we need more dad jokes in the Mandalorian, because I feel like they could have easily opened, because it was a giant alligator, like when he killed him, see you later, alligator. Like I wanted that, because of course the whole that's using your head. Like come on, I mean, like I know he's got Grogu now, he's gonna be a dad, so he needs to do the dad jokes.
Let's loop people into where this takes place too, because we talked about the time frame. You mentioned obviously Luke post Return of the Jedi, Luke? Right, it is, right?
Yes.
Like it's him building.
Yeah, the Empire. The Empire has been broken down. The Empire is in remnants. It is theorized that Grogu, what they were called, the Empire, the remnants of the Empire were calling for, was this idea that they were wanting to maybe harvest like DNA that would help them in building what we would know as the future Snokes and Palpatines and stuff.
Yeah.
So there is that possibility there. The Coruscant, the Republic is intact. You still have this is fresh enough from Return of the Jedi that there are still outposts that are being occupied by the Empire, as we saw throughout seasons 1 and 2, and there are even, like, let's say, new patrols with the rebels in the Republic.
Yeah, I mean, that's always good to kind of like keep that in mind, because I think there's so many things that jump around and go where especially in the Star Wars universe, it's good to know like where this fits. Yeah, solid first episode, I think. I actually don't even think you really need a spoiler, do you? I think it's just it's a nice scene setter for the season to come. I don't think anything incredibly major happened. Love to see Carl Weathers back. That's really, great to hear. They also, I think the story that I saw trending everywhere was that they finally mentioned where Cara Dune, what happened to her character, because obviously the actress who plays her fired because of some comments that she made, and so that was a big thing, because people were like, when she joined, I forgot what Carl's character's Carl she essentially, they gave her a nice little, not send off, but she's still out there doing her thing, crushing it. And so, that was the big thing that was discussed, because we haven't heard.
Accidentally steps in a Sarlacc pit. That's all we need to like think ahead.
Yeah. So
but,
I think,
they called the Sarlacc the daily water. But anyway, so you've got the obviously things have changed, because we look at that entire place, and is revamped. The bar is no longer a bar; it's now a school. It's obviously the place has been all cleaned up. There's this offering for Din Djarin to settle and to have a normal life, and of course he can't do that. What was interesting was they brought the droid back. What's his name? All I ever think of is when I see it is Taika Waititi.
IG-11.
Yeah, IG-11. For a brief stint, and then we also had an adorable interaction with Grogu and those little repair guys.
Best part of the whole episode. Aha! What are those guys? So wait, what? Like they're like the mechanics. Like what are they called again? I want to say I feel like I had a Funko that came also with the little guy, and it's great. What is it called?
I'm trying to look it up. I don't know.
We are definitely bringing some energy and dead air.
I know it's like
right
I was no, those are porgs. It's not the porgs.
I'm googling Mandalorian season 3 little guy. Babu Freak. Babu Freak.
Yeah, Babu Freak. Okay,
And so like there's more. It's great. The second they come on screen, we're all excited for that. I mean, that's what we live for. So that's great.
Now I've heard differing opinions. It's gonna be the Star Wars Gate of 2023. Was Grogu eating Skittles or was he eating M&Ms?
Oh wow.
Because I'm thinking
Disney,
M&Ms.
What does Disney own? What does Disney own or not?
Everything.
The question.
Yeah, it was Prozac. That's what it was.
Someone write that?
No, I just said that.
He was just popping Xanax. He's like, I need to relax. And
yeah, exactly.
And for those who don't know, so you said IG-11. Taika Waititi voiced IG-11 in, was it season 1 of The Mandalorian? So something that, I think we were looking up Babu Freak and, Grief Karga and Cara Dune. And it's interesting. I love the actor backstories behind things. I think it was Obi-Wan where Zach Braff was one of the drivers of a truck. Remember when he picked up Leia and Obi-Wan? And that big guy. And I had to look it up. The second I saw it, I was like, you always like a mole. It's gonna be someone, and it was Zach Braff. That's when the stormtrooper fell onto the laser fence and split in half, right? That's that episode.
I think so. Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. I think there's always a really interesting actor or actress behind these cool characters because they can hide and they all want to do it, So
now I will tell you, like I did a watch party on Stream Launch, and what happens is since we haven't had Marvel for a while, a group of us like Marvelous Johnny, Donovan Rose, Will Wilkins, King Von Schweetz, we do like Stream Launch watch parties for Marvel shows when they drop, like at 3 a.m. Eastern time, midnight Pacific. And we were watching the episode, and that the pirates that wanted to go and go into the bar, which was the school. Mm-hmm. I was looking at it. I'm like, why does this guy remind me of like a Power Rangers villain? And it wasn't. For whatever reason, this guy reminds me of the villain from Galaxy Quest.
Okay.
If you look at the way the face is, like it was kind of like the just like the whole face with no nose and stuff like that. Very similar. I couldn't get that out of my head. I don't know why it pulled me out of the episode, but it wasn't a bad thing. It was just like it was noticeable. I've never seen a creature in Star Wars that looked like him. And it reminded me literally of Galaxy Quest.
That's cool. I thought you were going to say Mystic Quest, but another
no. Galaxy,
great show. Yeah, I'm kidding.
But yeah, and seeing the space whales was amazing. Of course, that's a throwback to like Rebels. Um, One of the things I did hear about a critique of the episode was, a lot of the Mandalorian episodes. Let's not think of Book of Boba Fett. A lot of the Mandalorian episodes could be looked at. They were moving the plot along for the whole season, but each episode could have been categorized as its own story, like its own chapter. And so like of course you had Mando looking for the asset or the child, and like he has to like learn how to ride the creature before he can even go out there. And then you've got him getting the child and coming back, and his ship has been destroyed, and so it's an episode about him learning how to rebuild his ship. And like you have all of these different things, like there's even in season 2 where they're trapped on the ice planet, and Grogu's eating the eggs. There was still this standalone episode of trying to survive the ice spiders and stuff. But this episode wasn't very standalone in a sense. It's the first time that they've done this. And I'm wondering if it's kind of going to be indicative of the show, or if this is just we're just getting things started. We had Book of Boba Fett. We're just trying to get everybody caught up to speed. Now we're back to the program as usual.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I didn't really even think about that. It wasn't very self-contained. So maybe they are trying to string us along more so than before. I don't know. We'll have to see. That's an interesting like observation. I didn't think about that when watching it. So yeah, maybe they are doing a change of pace, even though. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. That's going to be interesting. That's an interesting take.
Now, I will say, apart from the episode this week, one of the things that I've really appreciated is obviously they've let this stuff kind of come out as the show is coming to kind of build up hype. Because again, it's Mandalorian. A lot of people are excited regardless of whether they really advertise or market. But there was a lot of these like clips of like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau like talking and kind of debating a little bit between themselves, like about Star Wars, and I love that. Like, there's a clip specifically about when did Luke become a Jedi. And it's like he like I think Filoni says like they're arguing that Filoni thinks that Luke only became a Jedi after Yoda died.
Okay.
Because there's like there's like this like back and forth. He's like you think you basically you think you've arrived, you think you're a Jedi, and it was kind of interesting to hear them go back and forth because you can see their love for the properties.
Yeah,
I think that's why it works so well. Like it's like Filoni and Favreau. It reminds me of like Marcus and McFeely from Marvel. Like when you had like leading up to Endgame, it was just like this duo, like Anthony, the Russos, kind of they kind of feed off well with each other, and they definitely had that chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want people. I think it's the same thing with John Watts and the Spider-Man trilogy. You don't want people that are there just to collect a paycheck, because then you're gonna get what you asked for at that point. So you want people that are passionate. Filoni's like, I mean, he's a Star Wars god at this point. I mean, what he's done, and he's really, for an entire generation of fans, he is like their George Lucas. And obviously Jon Favreau has really been another underrated director, creator, voice, because I mean, I think he's underrated probably for people of our age, because we remember Swingers and like the movies that he came from, right? And I think that's what we think of, but I think really he is kind of the director of that crew, right? There's Vince Vaughn was the actor, he was the director, almost like the Matt Damon Ben Affleck relationship, right? Ben Affleck was the director, but also a movie star in his own right. But then Matt Damon's like the actor out of the two. So, yeah, I think they have some really good people behind these projects, and I think that it's good that they're talking, and they're friendly, and they're connected, because we all know what can happen to a trilogy or to anything when the directors are disjointed and not working together. And we saw it with Last Jedi and then The Rise of Skywalker, which It's funny. I feel like my opinion, because I did not like Rise of Skywalker when I first saw it. I was like, and I talked to some people and they're like, yeah, it was all the Star Wars feels that I ever wanted and blah, blah. And I was like, okay. And I feel like my opinion has aged really well. Like, I think a lot of people actually didn't like Last Jedi originally when it happened. And I feel like that's aged a little better because it is just different and unique. And Rian Johnson at least created something unique. But also at the same time, it just was like, you talk about being self-contained. Those movies were very self-contained, but as part of a trilogy, it did not work.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's good that they are together. They're fans. They're friends. Also, they're a creative duo. We need more of that. I mean, that's what Marvel. Again, we've said it a million times. That's what Marvel does really well. They also develop young talent behind the camera, in front of the camera. I mean, they obviously bring in some big guns too, but I think behind the camera more so than anything else. Like, you know, I didn't know much about the Russos before Civil War, not Civil War, before Winter Soldier, and you know, once they got their footing in Marvel, they're a powerhouse production duo, and so their own company, everything. So I think. Same thing with John Watts. I think John Watts was he was a music director before Spider-Man Homecoming. Or I got to look that up. He had some kind of really small role before. So I think if Star Wars can start doing that and get back to their roots, I mean, the downside we saw, look, Han Solo, some will say, and I think he came on late, so I don't know if it was truly his movie, but Ron Howard directed that, you know, when it was all said and done. And clearly Ron Howard.
Solo, a Star Wars story.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I feel like I feel like there's like critical mass points and everything, right? I think that was the critical mass point and the downfall of like, they had so many movies planned. Like after Rogue One, I think was a success, right? So I think, Rogue One was a really good film. It's the story that everyone wanted to know for the longest time. How'd they get the Death Star plans, all this stuff. And so after that, Lucasfilm was going crazy. They were like, Solo's coming out, and then we're going to do this. And I'm sure they were going to do a Lando movie, and they were going to do that. Like, and then after that one, really just was just like, boo. I think they were like, we need to think about this. And now the shows, I think there's a mixed bag because Boba Fett, I think, was a little slow for some people. Well, The Mandalorian has been just like epic. I think it's good that they are, again, they're taking it like a grassroots kind of campaign. I think, you know, the creators are friends. They're talking. They're probably coming up with ideas, shooting the shit, being like, hey, like we could do this, we could do that. And so I think that's the way to go. And I applaud that. And sorry, that was my long answer from you bringing up the featurettes that they were doing. So
yeah, so it was interesting. Like kind of coming back to coincide with what you were saying. You know, it's funny when the Russos did Winter Soldier. Everything I heard everybody say was, oh yeah, they basically did the paintball scene in Community, and this is why they're getting to do Winter Soldier. And I had to go back and watch that, and I was like, oh yeah, that's fun. And that's like, they have like a cinematic quality to it. But of course they did more than that. And it was funny because with Rogue One, the biggest thing that really was a success for me was the ending, how it was so seamless into A New Hope. And it's funny because they just came out with something where they're talking about how Filoni was the reason why that scene was the way it was. Like he basically directed that scene. Like he was there and he's like, you put the button in the wrong place, and like he was like critiquing like every little thing about it, and like, again, a super fan. I think that's what
and
works.
You know who that sounds like, right?
Who?
Like what you just described, you know who that sounds like? That sounds exactly like Kevin Feige on the set of X-Men. It's exactly like Kevin Feige, where he's fixing Hugh Jack. He's like, oh, the spikes are that the hair's not big enough. Like those are the, the stories, like the lore that we hear, which you can probably Google to see if it's 100% right or not. But like these day and age, it's not like the fireside stories, but like, Kevin Feige is a young producer and he's like an assistant and he's on the set of X-Men and he's like telling Bryan Singer, no, like, you know, he's the hairs, the Wolverine spikes have to be bigger.
Yeah.
And so I think that's exactly what that sounds like, and that is the show of someone who cares about the property and the projects, and it will.
And if you even read that book back there, it's so funny because you can hear from them talking about about that time when they're consulting on these films. Him and Avi Arad were so frustrated because they would give so many like critiques and like suggestions, and the studios would just not listen to them.
I'm sure.
And you imagine like Filoni is at a point where he is able to do exactly what he wants to do. He's got a guy in his corner with Favreau who is 100% in line with their mentality, and where they disagree, they're gonna have a friendly debate and argue with each other, just like two friends, you know, going at something that they love, and they're going to come out with the best possible scenario for the thing that they love, that they both like, and that's what we need. It's not the studio heads deciding, you know, we need more of this or we need more of that. It's fans that are big, and I think that's like what I said about I say about Marvel a lot, is when you have people that are big fans of something, they love what they're doing. The actors are fans, the writers and the directors are fans. You know, it's great when you hear like what was it? Benedict Cumberbatch was going into a comic store dressed as Doctor Strange to buy Doctor Strange comics. You know, or you hear Elizabeth Olsen just talking about like House of M and like explaining possibilities and everything else, and even Anthony Mackie like being excited about like the different stuff that's going on and how they're very casual, you know, talking about how much they enjoy being around each other. That's what makes it important. And I think, I guess this kind of like segues away from Star Wars a little bit. Sorry, people. But this reminded me of something. You know, we just had Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Jeff Loveness was the writer for it. And he came out and spoke against what people were saying about how he did MODOK, about how the story went. And he was a little bit shocked that people didn't like it. And he was a little bit flippant about MODOK, basically saying there is no way, and you know, whatever, that I would play that character serious. And I was surprised to hear him respond that way and being angry, like actually reacting to fans. It's like, you have some people that just kind of like fall off of social media to get away from it, like Elizabeth Olsen, but he kind of is like responding outwardly about it. Whereas people like Jonathan Majors is responding on Twitter, and he's basically saying it doesn't change what I feel about myself. And it's like, it's that mentality. And I think that's where a lot of people are complaining right now about Phase 4 and 5. We have like writers and directors that maybe aren't as invested as the previous were to make it successful. And so there's less faith in these people that are doing these films, that is now translating into how people are reacting to it. Plus the internet and social media and everything else is making people think that they are, you know, armchair critics, and they're going to give their opinions on things.
Yeah. I mean, look, I always come back to, I was working and had to cover Dawn of Justice, which is Batman v Superman. And so I think the biggest takeaway that I have from the Ben Affleck Batman era, and I know a lot of people like Ben Affleck Batman, was I just don't think he was committed to the role. I don't think he wanted to do the role. And I think that whole cast was just weird. That's what happens when you just throw a bunch of people together. I think Cavill was a pretty decent, serviceable Superman. I think we've talked about this in the past. Man of Steel, I think, is actually a really good movie, in my opinion. And I think yours as well. But you have a lot of people thrown in there that were just thrown in there. You know, Jesse Eisenberg as a weird tweaky Lex Luthor. You know, and I remember just watching interviews, because we had to do interviews, and some people were like, "Oh, you were good as Lex Luthor," you know, that was my take. And he's like, "Oh, thank you very much." And then you have like the meme of Ben Affleck being like during a junket, like literally like with Dust in the Wind playing in the background. And that was so good.
That was so fun.
I think that's what happens when you just throw people there. I think, look at Suicide Squad, not the Suicide Squad, the first one. Cara Delevingne, I think, is another one who's gotten a lot better as an actress. She's not my favorite or anything like that, but she was she was horrible in that movie. They were like, oh, we got to throw in this really, popular model / actress, and she was later in Paper Towns and this. Again, if you just throw people in for the sake of doing it and don't plan it, and there are people that aren't committed to the role and committed to this, and that's what you're gonna get. And so I think, I think behind the creative, that's what you also need. I think the creative needs to be people that really care about the stuff, that really hold it dear, and you will get good quality things from there. I don't know if I would say I think people are pushing back against Marvel and the current phase. One, because I think it's just fashionable to do that, and it's going to happen. And two, things are different and new. I think the last phase was a little disjointed, and people have said that. But I also think, you said this before, it will probably come together at some point. But I also think it was an era of transition and trying new things. The shows, it was the first time we saw the shows. They were shorts are coming in, with Groot and other things like that. So they were just trying out different things, and then trying out things for different audiences. I think Miss Marvel's a really great example. When I say that for a different audience, I don't mean the audience that's from Pakistani heritage or that area of the world. I mean an audience, a younger audience. Same thing. I think Spider-Man freshman year will probably be more of that as well. And so I think it felt much younger and for a different age group. I enjoyed Miss Marvel, but I could see young girls and young boys it
resonates more with them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they vibe with it more, and so I think Marvel is trying things out, and I think you have to do that when you're on top. If you don't and just hold to your laurels and stuff, you're gonna eventually, before you know it, you're blink, and then whether DC's out in front or whatever. So I think we have to continue to wait, see what happens. If we have a string of subpar movies, I didn't think Quantumania was that bad.
No, I think it got a lot of hate for no reason. I think.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty solid.
And then I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this as the most conservative as I can. It's a mid-tier Marvel film.
Yeah,
I hate using the word mid because of it, but even mid doesn't mean a bad thing. It's just, it was a typical Ant-Man film. It was, it put a story along. It didn't shake me or stir me like, let's say, Wakanda Forever did. Or even No Way Home. But at the same time, it was still an enjoyable film. It was something that, is going to move the story along. And it's not at the low end. It's not at the high end of my preferences of films, but I enjoyed it. And I think that's where people have to kind of come to. And I told this to Will Wilkins the other day. I said, I think a lot of these films get a lot of hate because there's not other studios making Marvel films terribly. And whereas Marvel was always the better film of, let's say, whatever's out there, we have hope for DC. We have all of the properties with Marvel, and so they are going to be criticized more because they have got to now up the ante a little bit in the terms of just keeping continuity. And I think it's one of those things where they'll get it and they're going to understand it and they're going to work it out, and fans just have to be patient.
I mean, look, human nature is to hate. Look, why do so many people hate the Patriots? Well, not some. I mean, I don't. The last couple of years,
do we have time to list all the reasons?
Yeah, but I mean, again, aside from Bill Belichick and things like that, but I was a fan in the '90s of the Bulls, but there was a lot of people that didn't like Chicago when Jordan was on top. I think that's just it's just human nature. You always root for when the Lakers were winning. I was not a Kobe fan. Later on, I respect his game. I think when you see dynasties and things like that, you're kind of
you root for the underdog.
I think if I take it back to I'm not going to curse, but I take it back to I remember when Dune came out. I didn't like Dune. I mean, I'm throwing this right out there. Denis Villeneuve, I was talking so much smack about Marvel and that whatever, and it felt like a media grab to me. And look, he's gonna make a knock to make his movie even bigger. I thought Dune was boring. My wife fell asleep. Whatever. I know it's rated really high. Great. I think a lot of things about it. I'm not gonna go on a tangent about it. Whatever. The acting was solid, but it just kind of was whatever. But everyone's gonna poke at the bear because they need to drive headlines or drive. It's the world we live in.
I'm gonna make a confession. I've never been able to sit through Blade Runner.
Which one? The
Both.
first one? Oh wow, yeah. I mean, again, it's acquired taste, right? But you don't have like, I don't think you have Ryan Gosling coming out and talking trash about like, I don't know, Star Wars. You know, like I think people like, and that's, I lost all respect for when that. I mean, I know people are gonna put on the spot in interviews and stuff like that, but it was kind of like the Zack Snyder comment about Marvel 2 when Dawn of Justice came out and what he called Ant-Man like flavor of the week, because it was the first Ant-Man was coming around that time. He's like, this is not the flavor of the week. This is Batman, Superman, the iconic. I mean, and sure, like 100% Batman and Superman are, you know, and that's fun and whatever. Then I think Sebastian Stan talked trash back and like, I mean, like whatever. I think this is human nature. It's going to happen. And I also think, look, they've set such a precedent before. Endgame was, you know, like an era defining film. And I think it's really hard to stay at that level. And I don't think it's sustainable. I think, you know, and so I think they're trying things out. There's going to be shortfalls along the way. Some shows won't work. Some shows will work, and they're going to have to find their footing, but it's good they're trying now because they have to try different things. They can't just, they could have done phase 4 and literally just done everything the same way and been like, the shows aren't canon and, you know, we're just going to throw stuff out there that's fun and like, you know, whatever. They need to try different things out now. If you wait until you have to do it, it's already too late. And so I think you need to try it now while fans are on board, and, you know, whatever their goals are, I'm sure they have this is a $1 billion company. I'm sure they got great goals and they have everything planned out, you know, so I think they'll be fine. I'm not worried about it at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? We've done it under 2 hours, which I think is a good way to end the show. So overall, are you excited for more Mandalorian? That's all I'm going to ask you.
Yeah. Sorry, we went down a rabbit hole of craziness. Of course I am. I mean, look, I will say, like, the cool thing about Mandalorian is that in just 2 seasons with Grogu and with Din Djarin, I just butchered his name, but they've built like this real estate in our heads. Like, we're such favorites and such fans. Like, it feels like Grogu's been, I mean, the guy had I'm looking over there. It's in my wife's office. Like, they made a Funko of the Grogu Macy Day Parade balloon. So it's not even of Grogu. It's of the balloon that was and there's handlers for the like in the Funko. There's little mini handlers for the balloon. Like, it is such like a piece of like our culture now. And so, I mean, Pedro can do no wrong. He's
on a roll.
He's also just a great actor. Last thing I'll say about him, and then I'm going to shut up and then we can close it out. If you're ever a Pedro Pascal fan, the Nicolas Cage movie that he's in, is it like The Weight of Amazing
Extraordinary Talent or something?
Yeah. He's fantastic. And that's another one, like, it's a whole satire about Nicolas Cage, and it's fun. And so I think, you know, just I'm excited. Yeah, I'll be watching every week. I think, who doesn't like The Mandalorian, you know? So yeah,
absolutely. Well, guys, it is again Friday the 3rd. We are done. It's episode 13 in the books. We will catch you guys in next week for Nerd News, and then in 2 weeks. And we are getting so close to C2E2. I can taste it. So please remember, we will be at C2E2. We will be actually at booth 1742. If you are going to Chicago for the event on March 31st, April 2nd, please stop by. We'll have cool swag, and if you'd love to get like a hat or something, you're gotta do an interview with us. So by all means, we want to hear your nerd origin stories and make you, you know, part of, I guess, our news. Also, if you, I don't have a link for this, but you can also track us now on Google News. So if you go to Google, news.google.com, or if you pull up the Google News app, you can actually pull up Nerd Initiative as a source, and you can definitely follow us that way, and it'll also bring you to our.
Do we have a merch store?
You know, we really should get on that. You know, absolutely, we do have a merch store.
Okay.
Please check out our merch. If you want to show off that swag, we would love to see pictures of you. And like Michael said, we will post those pictures and tag you in it. So I guess free boosting that way. All you got to do is pay the piper.
Instant clout. Just
exactly. And then also, if you weren't already aware, please be sure to catch the Comic Press podcast next week. The whole new episode, I believe, Longbox Entertainment is going to be on with JJ. I know they'd love to see you. And then on top of that, we also want to remind you that if you like this show, you can get it in other forms. Fandoms and the Comic Press podcast are available in podcast form. That way, while you're driving to work or while you're doing your Monday tasks, you can sit and listen to us wax eloquent for hours on end. And
if you're having trouble sleeping, put on our 3-hour episode from 2 weeks ago. It will knock you right out. You don't need melatonin or anything like that. You'll be good to go.
And if you like the Nerd News and you want to have that as well, Nerd News is attached to the Fandoms feed. So not only will you get the Fandoms episodes like this week, you will also get the Nerd News episodes the next week. So you get 2 for 1 there. But also anywhere you get podcasts. And we would definitely appreciate if you would follow us on the Comic Press podcast or even on Fandoms on Spotify, because that's where we get the real business. So we would appreciate that. Follow us on Spotify if you can.
And wait, do we have a merch store before we go?
You know what? I don't think we do. Wait, we do right here. Be sure to catch that merch store. And just in case we did make it busy enough on here, also go ahead and follow. Check us out on the Braid Network.
It works. Stream.
Yeah. So so you can definitely.
Oh, look, it's right there. Someone scanned the barcode, but I think only we can see that. So
that's awesome.
Sorry, I'm giving you guys a backseat and play-by-play.
Yep. So by all means, catch us then. We're just wasting time now until it gets to 2 hours. I'm Tony. This has been Michael, and we are so glad to have you on. Catch us next episode, and we'll see you then.